everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and as we are threatened with having to be tracked everywhere if we want to, I don't know, go back to work or go to stores or go to restaurants or what have you, maybe travel, whatever it might be, there are other issues at hand here, the biggest of which being the economic risks that will push people into a level of dependence in order to make them so weak that they beg to be traced everywhere just so they can have the prevalence of being able to live, feed their family, own a business, whatever it may be. Before we get into this news today, make sure to hit that like button, check those links below, join us at our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. We are insanely shadow banned, so make sure to share this on social media. Seriously, guys, we need you guys to get the videos out because YouTube only shows about 3% of people who are subscribed to us our videos. It's crazy. GoFundMe, Patreon, subscribes are all below. Help us greatly and join us on Flote.app as well as BitChute. Everything's linked below. Anyway, let's get into this article out of Zero Hedge by Daniel Lacalle. It says the risk of the bailout of everything. And as the article goes into, despite massive government and central bank stimuli, the global economy is seeing a concerning rise in defaults and delinquencies. The main central banks' balance sheets, the Federal Reserve, Bank of Japan, European Central Bank, Bank of England, and People's Bank of China have soared to a combined $20 trillion. While the fiscal easing announcements in the major economies exceed 7% of the world's GDP, according to Fitch Ratings. This is the biggest combined stimulus plan in history. However, businesses are closing at a record pace and unemployment has reached extremely elevated levels in many countries. Well, yeah, and a big reason for that, my friends, is due to the fact that when you not only close down most businesses, and again, 52% of small businesses say they will never come back, and 24% of restaurants, which was already a tough industry. When you close down all these businesses, not only does it hurt all the employers or the employees at this business, they end up being stuck at home in their kennels or whatever you want to call it, homes. And what happens after that is that they don't make any money, so they can't spend any more money into the economy, while the Federal Reserve is printing insane amounts of money, throwing it at the stock market, temporarily causing deflation, but later on leading, once it ends up in the hands of individuals, it'll lead to inflation, which means it's another tax on on living. It's another hidden tax. It's another thing that will lead to more poverty. It's just the constant domino effect. It's a perpetual circle. It's what they call the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. Anyway, carrying on, and this is not going to end well, my friends. As it says, there is an important risk in what I call the bailout of everything, or the conscious decision from governments and central banks to provide any needed support to all sectors and companies with access to debt. Most of these stimulus packages and liquidity measures are aimed at supporting current government spending and providing liquidity to companies with assets, access to debt, and traditional sectors. It is not a surprise, then, that at the same time as we see the largest fiscal and monetary support plan since World War II, we are already witnessing two dangerous collateral effects: the rise of zombie companies and the collapse of small businesses and startups. According to the Institute of International Finance, IFF, the figure of global corporate bond defaults has risen to $50 billion in the second quarter of 2020, despite historic low interest rates and a high liquidity. By the way, the Fed says they are not going to be lowering interest rates anymore until, what, 2022 maybe? They're going negative, guys. Come on. As it says here, additionally, according to Deutsche Bank and the Bank of International Settlements, the number of zombie companies in the Eurozone and the US, large companies that cannot cover their interest expense costs with operating profits, has rocketed to new all-time highs, according to Professor Petrolakis, ECB, and Andrews, OECD. And I quote, Europe's productivity problem is partly due to the rise of zombie firms and the crowd out growth opportunities for others. What zombie firms tell us about Europe's productivity problem, World Economic Forum April 2019. This problem is only increasing in the current crisis. The rise in bond defaults is a consequence of previous high leverage in a weakening operating income environment. This should not be a concern if creative destruction works to improve the economy, as inefficient companies are taken over by efficient ones and new investors restructure challenged businesses to make them competitive. The big problem is that massive liquidity and low rates are perpetuating over capacity and keeping an extraordinary amount of zombie firms alive. Maintaining and increasing zombie firms destroys any positive effects from restructuring and innovation. Additionally, to maintain cash flows and stay alive, companies are cutting investment and innovation, technology, and research. Meanwhile, small businesses that do not have access to debt or own hard assets are dissolving every day. In most developed economies, where 80% of employment comes from small businesses, the bailout of everything is becoming a massive transfer of wealth from the new economy to the old economy, preventing a stronger and more productive recovery. In the Eurozone, the main beneficiaries of the European Central Bank corporate bond purchases are large industrial conglomerates that were already facing weak margins, poor growth, and bloated balance sheets in 2019. In the United States, the financing channel of the real economy is more diverse and the impact of zombification is smaller, but not negligible or irrelevant. Some of these problems may have been inevitable in a crisis, but the majority of them could have been mitigated significantly by implementing supply-side policies instead of large government-directed stimuli and recovery plans based on adding more debt to already challenged sectors. Now, look, I don't think that any amount of CPR is going to save an issue that's created by the very people giving the CPR. They're just going to break the ribs and collapse the lungs. As it says here, as it continues here, the bailout of everything, as long as it is large, creates significant risks. Low productivity and indebted sectors survive, creating a perverse incentive that benefits malinvestment and poor capital allocation. Additionally, as these sectors already had overcapacity and structural problems, their bailout does not lead to higher job creation or stronger investment. Furthermore, high productivity sectors will likely suffer the tax burden that rises after these governments' rescue plans, diminishing the employment potential and the likelihood of rising real wages as productivity growth stalls. Finally, when governments bail out large and overcapacity-ridden conglomerates, investment in innovation, efficiency, and restructuring of loss-making divisions are severely diminished. Why? Because the first reason why governments agree to take stakes or bail out large sectors is precisely to prevent them from restructuring. Alternatively, tax cuts and supply-driven liquidity measures to small businesses and technology would have worked significantly better at a low cost for taxpayers. There is no doubt that some liquidity and support mechanisms are positive, but what we are seeing today may have long-term negative implications. This article is very obvious, by the way. A weaker than expected recovery with low productivity growth and challenging return of the lost employment, as well as poor investment growth, are likely collateral damage of the misguided and panic-driven bailout of everything. Unfortunately, it will also generate more debt and higher taxes that will further complicate things for taxpayers and innovative sectors. So now that we're finished that article, here's the thing. When you have government coming in, forcing people into their homes, shutting down everything, basically turning off the switch on the global economy, not only are you going to have a global depression, but it's going to be a multi-year, possibly over a decade recovery. And that recovery isn't going to come easily from any government or central bank. In fact, that will create artificial prosperity for a short period of time, which we saw recently with the stock market, with the Fed pumping a bunch of currency into the stock market, and end with even bigger bubble, an even bigger collapse. And honestly, I mean, you cannot compete against the collapse that is still to come. Because, look, at the same time, we're seeing the rise of fascism. And by fascism and communism, too, it's a fascio-communist mix, kind of Chinese style, technocratic in a lot of ways, too. What we are currently seeing is that the governments in places like Britain, for example, are saying all these small businesses that got, bailout loans, like small business loans, they are loans. They're not really bailouts, and these people are going to have to pay it back. But of course, they cannot. They don't have the customers. They don't have the supply chains breaking down. They don't have the ability to pay their employees. They cannot pay off those debts. They'd have to like explode and triple in size to be able to pay off those debts properly. So the British government is coming in and saying that instead of them paying off those debts, they will take equity in their company. Seriously, they want to take equity in their company. And that, my friends, is fascism. And we're seeing that at the same time in the large airlines, the massive behemoths of, airlines that we see around the world that have been colluding for decades. We're going to see a few major airlines collapse, but at the end of the day, we're going to see a lot of them bailed out, and then the government is taking up ownership of a lot of them, like we've seen with Lufthansa in Germany. So these banks at the same time have a rude awakening as well. They've been massively bankrupt for over a decade at least. Their cash to deposit ratio shows them in most cases, having under 5% deposits covered in cash, and in many cases under 1%, and in many cases under 0.5% of deposits covered in cash, with the depositor insurance extremely low at the same time in the fine print. So a lot of people are going to be losing everything for that reason, and then also people are deferring on their mortgages, and Airbnb's collapsing, and it's just at the same time we saw as a government shut down small businesses through this whole thing. They were propping up things like Walmart and Costco, and again proving that the government likes the major monopolies. They create the major monopolies. The monopolies depend on government to allow them the space to do such a thing, while restricting the growth of small businesses and restricting the growth of innovation and competition, which again props up things like Walmart even further. And that's both on the left and the right. No matter how much they virtue signal, like on the left, oh, we need the regulations to stop these big corporations, these big monopolies. But meanwhile, what those regulations and taxes actually end up doing is suffocating the small businesses. The big businesses don't have to pay more taxes. The small businesses shouldn't be paying all these taxes. That's the question. It's not about who pays more. It's about they shouldn't be paying that. If you want an equal playing ground, if you want an actual competitive market, you have to allow these businesses to compete on their own with the demand of the public. People talk about voting all the time, but they only seem to support voting when it comes to picking the master to enslave their neighbor. But they never seem to support the voting of the dollar, individual demand, individuals giving demand to a product or a company or a service or whatever it might be. It's completely pushed out the door, and people focus on voting for politicians to extort other people. And again, on either side, it's that circular spectrum of collectivism. The greater good of the greater number, and it always comes down to this. Now, again, this goes back to also the idea that this is just going to be over. There's going to be some new normal, but the government's going to come in and fix all these things, and the banks are going to fix all these things. Guys, the government only does what they benefit from. The banks only do what they benefit from. They wouldn't do it otherwise, and that is a fact. So at the end of the day, we're probably going to see a massive new second wave BS phony news story to give the government more power. They're not going to relinquish it once they have it. Once this happens, any tremors that we saw in the economy previously that were massive to begin with are going to be doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. It's going to be much worse. We're going to see vast starvation, which is going to lead to dependence, further dependence. That dependence is begging the government to help them. It's a perfect situation for the government. It's like the Patriot Act after 9/11. It never went away. We're going to see massive contact tracing. We're going to be tracked everywhere. We're going to have the cashless technocratic society where everything is traced through the banking system. We never hold our money. It's always in the bank's hands. Therefore, the bank owns our money. We don't own our money. It's a loan to the bank, and that bank has obviously depositor insurance, though Mario Draghi before a couple of years ago at the ECB wanted to get rid of depositor insurance. But nonetheless, they will have the depositor insurance, and in many cases it'll only be about 3% of your money that you will get back. That's fraud. Now, on top of that, military police in the streets, massive martial law, warrantless arrest kind of stuff happening. They're going to crack down even further with the second wave nonsense, which we know is false, and let me explain that as well. So, Dr. Fauci worked for the Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases. He was on the board of directors, and he did the studies at the Wuhan Institute of Virology Labs which got millions and millions of dollars from the US government in grants in order to study coronavirus in bats that's 96% similar to the novel coronavirus, and to splice it and make it in a way so that they could spread it to humans. Obviously, it didn't spread as well as they would hope, because if it's too strong, it kills you too fast, doesn't spread. If it's too weak, it spreads really fast, but it doesn't kill you, and it doesn't give enough justification for what they've been doing. But and again, you're going to call me a conspiracy theorist, look into it. This is out on paper, completely declassified, nothing classified about it. It's a fact. Dr. Fauci worked at that Wuhan lab and was working on these studies for years to spread coronavirus to humans. It's crazy. As much as you might say it's crazy, it's a fact. And then you look at the recent CDC studies, and the CDC studies, which I've shown you guys many times here at World Alternative Media, show that if your chance of dying from coronavirus is 0.26%. Well, wait a second. Originally, we heard 3.5% to 7%, but no, now they say 0.26%. And if you're not in a nursing home, which makes up for most of the deaths, then it's 0.2%. If you are under 50, it's 0.1%. And if you count all asymptomatic cases, which are much higher than previously thought, it's around 0.04%. Now, if you have it, the chances of dying, if you take out even having it, just generally speaking, it's 0.002%. That's less than the flu, my friends. And we shut down everything. Well, we didn't. The government shut down everything. This isn't the coronavirus lockdown. This is the slave racket government lockdown. It has nothing to. The coronavirus was used as a convenient tool, and now they're going to say a second wave, and that second wave is going to affect children, and therefore there's going to be more heartstrings pulled, and more people are going to be selfish. The COVIDiots daring to go outside in a number of 12 or 15 to protest these lockdowns that are killing people in mass. Poverty kills more than almost anything in the world. And what's going to come out of that? Well, I think it's quite clear. You're going to have the hypocrisy of thousands of people rioting and burning down buildings. That's okay, but going outside in 12 or 15 people to say the lockdowns are wrong is selfish. COVIDiots must be forced into their homes or arrested or who knows what. And when the second wave comes, they're going to say, see, we told you so. Selfish monsters that want to kill children now, not just old people, but children. And they'll force people into their homes again, and more people will listen out of fear, and a lot of people will listen because the measures are going to be stronger and more coercive. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And a lot of people are going to have woken up, though, thanks to people like you that are watching this video, sharing these videos around. And what that'll lead to is a civil war type of scenario. The thing is, we are probably going to see a lot of resistance by the establishment, but I do believe long term we will win and that liberty will prevail. It's a battle of good versus evil at the end of the day. But when you shut down an economy, when you force people into their homes, you're forcing people into homes that they're going to have to give up later because they won't have a home because of this massive crippling effect on the economy. Trillions of dollars printed, thrown into the stock market. Guys, this is fake. It's manipulated. It's all fake. Everything we see is fake. And it's based on lies, more faking. And you're going to see coming out of that technocracy, like out of China, with social credit tied to like something like Facebook or whatever, ID 2020. You're going to see the continued attempt to force vaccinate. You're going to see the contact tracing you everywhere. They're going to have military force, or military police anyway, forcing you into your home. Warrantless arrests. It'll justify them being way more aggressive, which they've already been extremely aggressive. And you will see your money dwindling. And unless you're in a decentralized cryptocurrency or like you're saved up with gold and silver for the sake of your purchasing power, you are probably going to be screwed. And that's my opinion, not investment advice. But it goes without saying if you take a little peek at history. So anyway, this is a really, really concerning thing to be facing, and to think that they're really going to try another lockdown. We're seeing that in Beijing right now, and we're seeing the attempt to lock down again in the United States very soon. What's going to happen? I mean, we are in a slave racket. Everyone's being forced to walk around in masks looking like complete slaves, like the Star of David wrapped around your arm. You can't walk your dog in many places. Karen calls the cops on you, starts screeching at you, even though the numbers very demonstrably show that the numbers are extremely low. You still have to deal with this kind of stuff. I mean, it's so far past just basic tyranny. This is like beyond Orwell. This is like if Orwell and the Twilight Zone and Black Mirror all had a baby together and called it 2020, and it's gonna it's going to get worse before it gets better, guys. And the fact that we're not doing anything about it makes me most furious, because people are just wandering through life like this. It's a survival mechanism. It's a protective mechanism that a human nature has, where they see this stuff and they just try to look at it as normality as much as possible. They don't want to freak out, because if they freak out, they'll go crazy. But look, there's a way to transfer energy, and you have to utilize that energy, that anger that you have, and put it towards resisting and not obeying this complete insanity that's going to kill way more people than shutdowns. I mean, even months ago in April, when Bill Gates himself said that the shutdowns will kill more people than the coronavirus, but we need the shutdowns to continue, I mean, you would have thought that most people would wake up to that. Or the CDC saying you can't spread it on surfaces, or the countless studies that show that that masks don't do really anything, or the fact that we're looking at a 40 million person unemployment rate in the US. I mean, it went way over 20%. I mean, and to begin with, there's bad unemployment if you actually looked at the labor force participation rate. So it's just absolutely insane that people have allowed this to happen. And, it really begs the question, when are people going to stand up? What are people going to do about it? And are we going to accept a second shutdown? Now there is an eye of the storm. They're going to throw in riots and race wars. It's insane. And we have to break free. The sooner the better, because if we don't, we are seriously doomed. Seriously doomed. And I'm in Mexico for the reason of, YouTube said that if I talk about things that the World Health Organization doesn't agree with, I will be censored, I will be shadow banned, and I will be demonetized. Well, I don't negotiate with terrorists being people that utilize fear to enforce ideology. So I got demonetized. I've been insanely shadow banned. It's absolutely brutal. I don't even show up in most searches. It's crazy, which is why we need you on BitChute and Flote. But they bankrupted me. So I'm in Mexico living on $400 a month right now in an apartment, and I have to go back to the U.S. soon, but I had to sell everything, my home, everything I own. And we need people, because the mainstream media is like king on this. It's like Operation Mockingbird. It's the CIA propping up mainstream medias on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and all these other platforms, which is why we need you on BitChute and on Flote.app, all linked below. And we need your help now more than ever, because if we don't get your help here, this is the age of the most important battle on information ever. I mean, the propaganda that's coming out of the mainstream media is insane. The establishment propaganda will literally lead to millions of deaths with the poverty that we're witnessing as blowback from all of it, and the control that we're seeing of the masses is unbelievable. So we've just accepted not being able to leave a country and go to another country. I mean, seriously? Imagine telling someone that 6 months ago. It's insane. But like I said, if you guys help us out any way you can, check those links below, or even just share it on social media, hit that like button. It's really important, because we need to get this information out. We've never been more censored. No one's ever been more censored. Everyone has to toe a line or else they get destroyed. They're deep sixing my career. They've completely destroyed my media, and I need you guys to help out any way you can, including going on those other platforms and helping us out. This is insane. We cannot accept it. We cannot go quietly. And right now, with the lack of funds and everything that helps us get out that message, I don't know. I'm not really sure anymore. Everyone's hurting. I know that. Everyone's hurting. But information is extremely important to free us from the chains that so many people unfortunately revere. And we need you guys now more than ever. Anyway, I'm going to cut it short there. I appreciate everyone watching. Hit that like button, share on social media, and again, join us on Flote.app and BitChute. We're on Minds and Library as well, at Wham. And yeah, anyway, hope everyone stays safe. And when I say stay safe, I don't mean that programming about coronavirus. I mean stay safe from the government tyranny around every corner, because you're going to want to get more prepared than ever, because things are about to get worse, like I said, before they get better. I don't want to be negative, and I am positive and optimistic long term, but things are going to get worse first. Don't think this is over and they're just going to open everything up, relinquish power, and everything's going to be back to normal. It won't. It'll never be back to normal. But it could get better from here. This could be a lesson for everyone. And I've never seen so many more conspiracy theorists than I've seen lately, because of the blatant inefficiencies and absurdity in the stories of the establishment. Anyway, appreciate everyone joining us. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribe Star. We really can't do it without you. We've been so insanely shadow banned, about 90% at this point, and 95% demonetized. As Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, comes in and says that she is shutting down quote-unquote controversial content and cutting out the views on this controversial content by 70%. She's been bragging about it. We need your help more than ever in this battle for truth in information. You guys are what keeps us alive, so we really appreciate just even $1 a month makes a huge difference. If everyone could give just $1 a month, we wouldn't even have to worry about competing against the mainstream propaganda networks. You can also donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen for you to scan if you please, as well as in the comments and description. Liking and sharing makes a big difference as well, and finding us on alternative social media platforms like flote.app, that's flote.app, makes a huge difference. We're at Josh Sigurdson as well as at Wham. Flote is replacing Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon all in one with encrypted private messaging, and of course monetization on videos for creators, live streams with super chats in crypto, and most of all, no algorithm, because at the end of the day, it's all about reach, guys. This is all about actually reaching people with the message and waking up the public. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, Minds, BitChute, all sorts of different platforms. Try to follow us on as many things as possible, because very soon this channel will very likely just be completely deleted from YouTube, and you'll never see us again, and you'll be stuck with only the mainstream networks. Also, come on out and see us at Anarcho Vegas 2020 in Las Vegas, Nevada in July, where such speakers such as G. Edward Griffin and many others will be speaking. You could use promo code WHAM on your VIP tickets and save 10%, as well as buy extremely cheap tickets for just $20.20. You won't find a cheaper conference than this with such amazing names. Check anarchovegas.com for more information on that. We hope to see you out there. And anyway, I really appreciate all of you guys joining us. You make it possible for us to survive in this volatile, propagandized climate. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.